Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things Giants football and all things college football. I'm your host, Sal, here with my co host, Monty, and we have a special guest host with you guys today. But what's going on, Monty? Let's start there. You can introduce our guest.
Yeah, man, I'm doing good. We haven't done the live show since, we were on with Dan and Nick, but now we got another special guest. We got Marshall Green from ChatSports. So thank you, Marshall, for joining us. We're excited to, getting some, prospect and Giants talk with you.
Absolutely, man. Appreciate you guys reaching out. Giants football's right around the corner. I'm getting pumped up. Watching joint practices last couple of days was a lot of fun. So getting me hyped up, and I'm ready to talk some Giants football.
Yeah, man, sounds great. So why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself and where they can find you and, all that type of stuff.
Yeah, awesome. So Marshall Green, you can find me on Twitter at Marshall Green _. I work for ChatSports. We are a YouTube-based sports network that also does content with Amazon. We cover the NFL, NBA, college football, and I'm our New York Giants host. I'm also our New York Knicks host. Just make videos every single day about the team, news, rumors, things like that. But grew up a Giants fan. Born in New York on Long Island, but I was raised in Houston, Texas. I'm 29 years old. So growing up, the Houston Texans weren't really a thing. My dad's a New Yorker, 35 years, and we always had Sunday ticket growing up. And I remember watching the Giants for as long as I can remember. So now I get to cover them as a full-time job, and same with the Knicks fan as well. So I really living my dream covering the Giants and Knicks. It's a lot of fun, but I started covering high school football in Dallas, Texas, and I got to cover some pretty cool prospects that are going to be playing college football this year. And then some guys that we were going to talk about on today's show, some quarterbacks. Got to cover Quinn Ewers, plays for Texas. Garrett Nussmeier going to be the starting quarterback for LSU. And those two guys, I'm real big fans of them. I know that Quinn Ewers can be a polarizing player, but at the high school level for me, I had never seen anyone throw the football like that before. And I'm sure that you guys have your own thoughts and opinions on that as well. And I'd like to hear about that. But yeah, Quinn was awesome. Also got to cover JJ McCarthy. IMG came down and played against the team in Dallas. That was a lot of fun. I didn't know too much about JJ because obviously he didn't go to high school in Texas, but like preparing the week or two before, everyone's telling you this guy's going to go to Michigan. He's going to be a big time recruit. And he was a good player, and I was really impressed with him in the game. But when I got to interview him after the game, it was like this guy had already been through like 20 years of media training. He was the most sound high school prospect I had ever talked to. And I think he's going to be a really good player in the league. But yeah, that's a little bit about me. Started covering high school football. Went to the University of North Texas. I was born in New York, raised in Houston. I live in Dallas now and get to cover the Giants and all things that. So pretty cool.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah, I appreciate you going into that. Sorry, we're just talking you over there, Sal. But yeah, I appreciate you going into that. All that kind of makes a little bit sense. I was kind of wondering how it all came together with you covering like high school sports and down in Texas and how that connection worked with being a Giants fan. So that all makes sense. Sal and I are both big JJ McCarthy fans, and that kind of checks out because he's a great player. He's a player that both Sal and I think will succeed in the league. But I know at least from like doing all my research on him, as much as I was impressed as him as a player, I was definitely just as impressed with him as a person. So that doesn't surprise me at all with it. But yeah, I mean, maybe start here with Quinn Ewers. He's the kind of the bigger name right now. We'll get into Garrett Nussmeier. He's a guy that I want people to pay attention to this year. He's a guy I'm a big fan of, and we'll talk about him. But Quinn Ewers is the guy that everybody knows. He was the guy who's a couple plays away from making a national championship game last year. And we were talking about, I mean, he was one of the greatest high school recruits of all time. I think he had like a perfect grade from 247, if I remember correctly, like absolute freak of an arm. So yeah, talk about him a little bit.
Yeah, no, he was really good to cover. Really good player, really good kid. I know some people think he's a polarizing guy, but he's someone that like was the first guy where it was like this guy has expectations on him as a junior in high school, and I got to cover him a little bit and knew some guys that coached him in 7-on-7, like growing up playing high school football in Dallas. So I saw him when he was an 8th grader or 9th grader. And it's like, this guy just throws the ball. He's just different. And you can tell when you're watching high school kids, you're like, that guy's going to go play Saturdays. And like, all right, maybe he can go play Sundays too. And that was like initially when I first watched Quinn, I was like, this guy's special, but a really good dude. Like he was super cool, really well spoken. He was humble in the interviews. High school players can be all over the place in interviews, and he was locked in. But it was the most impressive thing to me is he was doing that as a junior. He didn't even play his high school senior year. If you remember, he actually just went straight to Ohio State. I don't really know what happened there. I know it didn't work out, and then he went to Texas and it worked out there. But yeah, Quinn, amongst all of the quarterbacks, Garrett, JJ, and him, in high school, I would have told you I thought he would be the best college and pro player out of all of them. Obviously, still a long, long way to go on that. But I'm excited to see and watch him play this year because this is an opportunity for him to win the national championship, and he could cement himself as the number 1 pick in the NFL draft if he has a great year. So, like, it's up to him. He goes out and plays well. Obviously, it depends on a lot of different circumstances. But Quinn, he's a special player, and I would love for him to be a Giant.
Let's start with him then. So when we did our QB review last year, I don't think where was Quinn? He was like QB7 for us or something like that, or QB8 in the class. So I think this was before everybody decided to go back to school. So I think our final ranking, and I think we did this in November. We literally put our episode up we edited 2 episodes, but we put it up right after Daniel Jones versus ACL, which was not planned that way, but it worked out well.
Always funny how that works out, right? I know. Trust me, I know.
So I think our final ranking at the time was, and this is back in November. It was number 1 was CJ. Was Caleb. It was Caleb 1, Drake made 2. Yep. I think we had Shador 3 because we thought he might come out, and I think we had JJ 4 and Michael Penix 5. That was our top 5. That was our preference based on what we liked, and we kind of went back and forth on that.
And then 6 Jaden Daniels at the time, and 7 I think we had Quinn.
Right,
okay. And that was 7 Knicks, 8 Quinn.
Yeah, and that was around the time Jaden Daniels was really beginning to take off. He was like pretty good most of the year, and then he just took off in November.
Yep.
And so his stock went crazy. So we land. Obviously, I think if we had done that episode maybe a month later, he might have been a little bit higher. But to be totally honest, we were not as high on Jaden Daniels as everybody else. And there were reasons for that. But Quinn Ewers, let's talk about him. Polarizing is the word, man. When we watched him, you watch those Alabama games for 2 years, you're like, holy crap, this guy's going to be like a Hall of Famer. And then you watch, what was the other, was it Oklahoma State, the other one, where he was just, I forgot what the game, but
I don't remember exactly which one.
There were some games where he was so awful. You're like, is
I
this the
think
same
it was
guy?
Oklahoma State, yeah.
His highs and lows are incredible.
Right. I mean, there were, like you said, the throws he made in the games against Alabama, you're like, wow. There might be 5 guys on the planet who could throw the ball like this. But when he was bad, my goodness, I'm like, does this guy even know how to play football? So tell us that's where we were with him. There was just too much inconsistency. The mechanics, I know that's just his arm angle. I don't think that's going to change, but it did seem to lead to a lot of inconsistent throws. And a lot of times he just kind of looked like he didn't know what he was doing out there when he was not on his hot streak. So we were just like, this guy looks like a total project, and he may need to go back to school or sit for a year or 2 in the NFL. But what are your takes on him?
Yeah, I haven't done a deep dive of his college film, so I don't want to come out and say I'm an expert on his college film yet. But from the games I have watched and just watching him for a while now, he definitely needs to become more consistent. I would say right now his biggest flaw is inconsistency, because he'll have those splash plays where it's like, all right, that was an NFL throw. And then there's other plays where it's like, all right, you look like you probably shouldn't even be playing, or you didn't know what the play was or the read, or things like that. So definitely needs to fix that and be more consistent. I also think he needs to tighten up on his mechanics as well. And we've seen quarterbacks throughout their growth as players, even well into the pros, their mechanics can get tightened up, and the different ways players will come into the NFL and throw within 3 years they're throwing the football. It's much different. But the thing that I feel like a lot of people forget about Quinn Ewers is he just turned 21 years old. He's an extremely young prospect, and he's going to be going through the NFL Combine next year at 21 years old. He'll be 22 until March. He didn't even have a senior year of high school. His senior year of high school was Ohio State. So the things that I think he needs to iron out are just growth, more reps and playing more football and more coaching and things like that. Because I'm going to look at as a prospect and quarterbacks, I want to see what you do when everything's right as well as when things are wrong. But when you can make those splash plays, I feel like we can iron out and work out the other things. And yes, he needs to obviously get better. And I think he needed to go back to school. I'm glad he did. I think it's really going to benefit him. He's get another year under Steve Sarkisian. They're going to be more comfortable together. He's going to be more of a leader of the team this year. And that's where I want to see him grow as well. Because in high school, when I got to cover him, he's the leader because he's the best player, right? He's Quinn Ewers. Mm-hmm. He's the 5-star. He's going to Ohio State. He's going to get paid a lot of money. But in college, like, you got to be a leader. Like, those dudes have to respect you. And I want to see how that team rallies around him and things like that. But when it comes to strictly like, throwing the football and making throws and being a quarterback, I think he's got what it takes to be an NFL guy. Got to get better, obviously. But, man, if he plays great this year, like, the number one pick is wide open. Like, we didn't see Jaden Daniels this time last year. So he's got the world at his fingertips right now. Super talented guy, really nice kid. He's 21. Like, he just turned 21 in March. He's going to be a super young prospect. And I think we've seen, to bring it to the Giants a little bit, Joe Shane likes drafting those younger guys. He looks at younger prospects. So I don't know if he's a Joe Shane guy or not, but if we're in the market for a quarterback, we'll all be watching his film this year.
Yeah, man. He's a really interesting guy. I remember, back when we were watching his tape, he was one of the more fun prospects to watch, even though some of his tape made you want to rip your hair out. Other times when you're watching it, it's just like you enjoy watching, like despite you sitting here watching like all 22 with no sound for like 2 hours back to back. He makes it fun. He'll like really make it worth it with just watching some of the passes he can make. You're totally right with him being, having consistency issues and, whether, get some coaching out at Texas and then get some coaching, when he gets the NFL, that all that will help. Was any of that an issue in high school, or it seemed like more of a college thing?
I think it was more when he got to college. He was the best player on the field in high school. They did end up losing. I believe it was a state championship game. But like the talent was just too good in high school for other teams to really compete in a week in and week out basis. Did I think that he would have these moments where it's like, all right, you don't even look like someone that probably should be playing some of these plays, but he's a hard worker too. Like, that's one thing I always respect about him. Like, watching him since 8th grade playing 7-on-7, like, he's going to put in the work. And I don't really have any doubt about him becoming just a more consistent player. So I didn't really see that as an issue in high school. Maybe when the talent level, kind of met the floor and the ceiling, it worked out that way. But again, for me, like, he was doing this last year at 20 years old. And the year before that, he was 19 years old. I know that's college. That's what you do. But look at all the quarterbacks that are coming out now outside of JJ. Like, they were all much older. I mean, Caleb was a little bit younger of a prospect, but we're seeing Bo Nix, Michael Penix. Some of these guys are a little bit older. Jaden Daniels. I would love to see what Quinn looks like at 25 years old. Like, that guy's going to be pretty good, in my opinion.
He's definitely intriguing. I mean, like, you can't, like you said, I think what you see a guy make a splash play, you're like, you can work with that. I heard, I think it was Dan Jeremiah was talking about this when he said, when we were scouting, we talked about his time as a scout. I think he was a scout for the Eagles, if I recall. And he said, when you would see a guy make a great play, he said, well, you can't unsee that. Like, like it's there.
Yeah.
And he clearly has it in the tank. And now it's up to the team, the coaching staff, to like get it out of him and make it consistent. So there's no doubt, like, in terms of upside, when you look at this upcoming class, and obviously the whole season has to play out, but when you're looking at upside, there are not many guys who are at that tier of elite, just raw talent that like Quinn Ewers, right? I mean, I think you got to look at him, maybe a guy like Jalen Milroe, I mean, it's not a big group, that's got that kind of upside. So I'm with you. What do you think about, I don't know how much you're following what's going on in Texas, but what do you think about like him just standing there with Arch Manning just kind of staring over his shoulder? They have the top recruit from 2 different classes sitting there in their QB room. So, I mean, I was kind of surprised he went back. I was surprised that Arch Manning stayed there. I'm like, what do you make of that?
I know it's going to sound corny. I love it, man. He said, I'm going to be better than you guys. And I'm going to stay here and I'm going to beat you out. And he's a competitor. Like, I'm sure he had to leave Ohio State. We see a lot of these quarterbacks transfer now, but he went to Texas. He always wanted to go to Texas. Even before he committed to Ohio State, he wanted to go to Texas. Coaching situation at the time was a little bit moving around and they weren't as solid as where they are right now. But I like it. I like that he's competing, and that's added pressure. Like, there's nobody more popular than Arch Manning right now in Austin, Texas, and he's over your shoulder. And if you struggle, you lose a game, people are going to be talking about it. I like it. He's a competitor, and I think he's going to thrive. I really believe it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great point because look, I mean, if he doesn't survive, then it is what it is. You kind of learn a lot about him one way or the other. If he can't deal with this pressure and Arch takes over, that's an indictment on him. But if he does hold Arch off and he has a great season with him looking over his shoulder the whole time, that's a really good sign for how he deals with adversity and how he can, win in one of the best quarterback rooms in, all of college football. I mean, you don't deal with a backup like Arch Manning very often.
No, you do not. I feel bad for him at times, but that's college football.
But like you said, he chose it, right? He could have declared, or he could have absolutely, with the portal wide open. I mean, Ohio probably wasn't going to go back to Ohio State, but Ohio State was wide open. Miami was open. Florida State was open. USC was open. I mean, there were plenty of big programs looking for somebody to transfer. Oregon at the time was absolutely open. So, and he said, no, I'm good. I'm staying here. So I'm definitely going to watch. If he makes the leap that, he could make and he becomes a top tier player week after week after week and get consistent, I agree with you. Then people are going to say, wait a minute, this guy was the number one recruit in America. Look at his frame. Look at his whole makeup. This is a number one pick kind of talent, and all of a sudden he'll surge. So he definitely is one of those guys.
Very interesting prospect, man.
We'd love to have you back later in the season. Like when we do our reviews, just to see how this all like shakes out, to see if you get a chance to watch this film, and and see how these guys do. But do you want to move on to the next guy? Or do you have any other questions about Ewers, Monty?
No, we could talk about McCarthy, or if you got more questions about Ewers. I know Nussmeier too. Probably not a lot of people know about him, but he's a good player.
Let's go to Nussmeier, right? I think that's. I mean, so for those who don't know, we're getting back in the swing of doing this pod on a regular basis. We have to get most of our crowd back, but for those who don't, they'll be listening. Don't worry. For those who don't know, Garrett Nussmeier is an intriguing prospect. Both Monty and I have been like, the reason we found you was because we're like, oh look, he's talking about Garrett Nussmeier. Like, nobody's talking about Garrett Nussmeier, but we liked his tape. Whatever little tape we could find of us, because we're looking for gems for next year, because it's not like last year's class, right? There's no guarantees. We really like what we saw in those few games he got to play when Jaden Daniels got hurt. So, I'll give a little intro about him. He's 6'2", 198. Unlike Ewers, he was a 4-star recruit. I think he was the 152nd top prospect in the country when he came out, 19 top quarterback. So not the pedigree of guys like Ewers and Arch Manning, but committed to LSU. He's been there for a couple of years, got slid behind Jaden Daniels. But what do you covered him a little bit? So why don't you tell us what your thoughts are on Garrett Nussmeier?
Yeah, so I got to cover him. I believe that was his senior year of high school. Really good quarterback, and like a different kind of quarterback than Quinn. I would say Quinn in the pocket at the high school level, and I know it's high school football, but he could make every throw. I'm not saying Garrett couldn't, but Garrett was a guy that extended plays, and he got out of the pocket, and he was someone that it almost – I remember I probably tweeted a couple times when I was covered in high school. I was live tweeting games. Like, there were some like Aaron Rodgers moments where he's outside the pocket and his arm angles are crazy, and he was a playmaker, and he had that wow factor to him. And his dad, I believe his name is – just trying to look it up, Doug Nussmeier.
Yeah,
he's worked for the Cowboys for a really, really long time. So
he's the Eagles QB coach now.
Okay, so yeah, I didn't know where he was at now, but Garrett is a kid that, just like JJ and just like Quinn at the time, like so beyond their years. Like you speak to him, it's like this guy, his dad, he's been around NFL players and things like that. Garrett was one of those players where I initially thought was going to be like a really, really good college player because I was seeing comparing to other high school quarterbacks I would watch, and he was doing things that they could not do. Then I think, did he go somewhere before LSU? I don't remember if he did or only LSU, but he obviously didn't play all that much. And I
Yeah,
was wondering what
No,
was going on. Then
he
obviously,
he went directly to LSU.
but he's
okay,
been
yeah,
on the
and
bench.
Yeah,
Jaden
been on the
Daniels did his
bench.
job, and he's been
He just hadn't really had an opportunity to play, and he's gotten some spots where he has gone in and he's flashed that arm talent that I saw when he was 18 years old, and I'm going to be a lot of fun to watch him this year at LSU. I hadn't even really thought about him as like an NFL draft guy yet because he is still just a junior, I believe. So
Redshirt
theoretically,
junior.
yeah, maybe he has a really great year, and then it only takes 1 year now. But um, he's a talented kid. Makes a lot of throws outside the pocket. Plays with a swag about him. He's got some confidence. He's got some swag. I liked him, man. He was a little bit of a rah guy. He was a competitor. He was a good player. He really was. Made a lot of good throws.
That's all really interesting to hear because like Sal was saying, we have little bits we learned about him, but we haven't seen a ton of him in college. Like Sal was saying, it's like literally just like looking in the Twitter timeline, trying to get little tidbits about him, and just kind of some of your tweets end up coming up looking for that. But
yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, but it's interesting because I've noticed
it's a very
he has,
cult genre that we're looking for.
Yeah.
Like the Garrett Nussmeier fan club. Yes,
that's very niche.
But
If it's us three, I don't know how many more, but I'm happy to be a part of that.
But I've noticed in college from the tape again, he can sit in their pocket, and he's gotten to the point where I don't necessarily know how far he could sling that thing in high school, but I've seen him go. There was a clip against Georgia. He played the second half versus Georgia in 2022, and he went to Neighbors, and he went from the 20 to the other 20 like with ease. Yep. Like kid can absolutely sling it, but it seemed like he could move. I know I was like look some videos about him. He comped his game to like Joe Burrow. That's what he wants to model it after. It's like a little bit to be able to move around, but even though he's not like these like special athletes, not like known as a scrambler. But it's interesting to hear that that's kind of what flashed in high school, because that's one thing I'm kind of keeping my eye on to see like what he does this year when he really gets the opportunity about getting out there, extending plays, working with the arm angles, that type of stuff.
I would say, I don't know if a scrambler more so as in like a guy that's creating plays behind the line of scrimmage. Like he wasn't a rushing threat. Like I don't want that to be misconstrued. Like he could, but like that was high school. He was a guy that bought time for himself, and he would move the pocket, and he could evade the rush, and he could stick in the pocket as well. But I always remember just his playmaking skills were things that I thought popped off the field to me.
Yeah, we saw that. Again, it's such a small sample size in college.
Yeah.
Like there's not much. I mean, there's some wow. Like you watch the wow plays, like, okay. I remember Monty said it to me. He's like, look at this play. He's like, watch this guy. And I was like, who? And he's like, you'll know when you see it. And he tells me to go. I think it was the Georgia game. And he's like, you'll know when you see it. And then as soon as I saw it, I texted him. I was like, holy shit! And I was like, that throw, like when he's scrambling. And the first thing we both said was, again, not to slander him, but like when we saw an LSU game, Jaden Daniels move out of the pocket, he scrambled. He was a tuck and run guy, right? He never scrambled to throw. Like he was such an elite runner. He was like the second he got room, he was gone. And he would run for 60 yards. But it was like we weren't used to seeing that in LSU. Like when plays broke down and he broke the pocket, he was just gone. And then we see the same thing happen with Nussmeier. He slides over. We're like, oh, we're expecting him to run, and he just drops back and slings that thing like 80 yards on a line to Neighbors. Neighbors almost look surprised.
Yeah, he fell over.
Right, it was crazy. So we saw that throw. We're like, okay, if you can do this, you've got some talent in that arm of yours. And we started looking him up. So the sample size is really small, but I looked it up. So he started one game last year.
Okay.
And
We got an
in
official start.
the Wisconsin game, so if you remember, I don't know if you remember, but Jaden Daniels got murdered by Dallas Turner in the Alabama game.
I remember that hit.
So when he was having like the game of his life, and then like Dallas Turner went headhunting and like basically decapitated him. So Nussmeier came in at the end of that game. He just went 5 for 10. Like I think it was like the third or fourth quarter he came in, and he was fine. But they were basically already the game was basically over. Alabama had pretty good control of the game at that point, but he started the next game against Wisconsin.
He started the
Oh no,
bowl
that was the
game.
bowl game, right? That was the
Yeah,
bowl game he played, right?
he sat out.
That's right. This was a stat line: 31 of 45, 395 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception. And he went insane, and that game was just like a highlight reel thing. I went back and looked at his stats, and we look at a lot of advanced stats when we do these things just to try to
Okay.
predict certain behaviors. The kind of things we're looking at, like we use the PFF advanced stats to kind of look at it, and some of it is useful. So big time throw rate versus turnover worthy plays, and then I personally am a big fan of using pressure to sack rate and time to throw to judge how these guys are manipulating the pocket. So his first year he was all over the place. I'm not going to count that, but the last 2 years, even though the sample size is small, his time to throw for a college player was 2.43 and 2.42 seconds. So he's getting the ball out quick. Like that's NFL speed. And his pressure to sack rate was 6.3 and 0. So he didn't take any sacks last year. But so and I think whatever little film we saw of him, we saw a guy who could sense pressure, manipulate the pocket, get the ball out quick, and still make some big throws. And we saw the flashes of the big arm. And I'm like, all right, well, why aren't more people talking about this guy? And I went back and looked at his high school portfolio, but you saw him. So you described him a little bit. When you saw him in high school, did you think to yourself, this guy looks like an NFL player?
I don't know if I saw an NFL player because he wasn't a guy that you show up to the field and he's 6'1", maybe 195 right now, right? It says 6'2".
Yeah.
I'm gonna
He's
say
probably like 6'1",
6'1", some change or something.
yeah, 6'1", maybe NFL combine,
He's
maybe even
Tommy DeVito
shorter
size.
than that.
Yeah.
But like in high school, he was a skinny kid. Like he was a kid. He was 17, 18 years old. Like we all were kids at 17, 18 years old. But he needed to put more muscle on. And he's probably up to like 195, maybe 200 pounds at this point. But he's not the 6'5", 210 quarterback you see. He wasn't Quinn Ewers. That was like, okay, he's 6'3", 6'4". He's going to be that guy. But the throws that he could make were different than outside of Quinn. I only got to cover JJ for one game, and their team was so good. It was so hard to even compare to the other ones. They were always wide open. But, I mean, he was the second best quarterback I covered behind Quinn. And I don't know if he is – I mean, he's got a long way to go. He's got a long way to go. Like, he's got to play. He's got to go through it. But, yeah, he's got special arm talent and all things that are like he's a competitor. He's someone that the team rallied around him. He was a leader. He was like the face of that team. He's got a good upbringing. We know who his dad is. So maybe I should have thought more of it at the time. But, yeah, I definitely thought he was going to be a good college player. Like I thought he was going to go and play right away and just hadn't got his opportunity or things hadn't shaken out his way. But, no, definitely a guy I always thought was really, really talented.
So, when we first got on here, you kind of talked about how like impressive of a kid JJ was. You talked how much you liked Quinn Ewers. You talked to like, how impressive Nussmeier was, dad being a Cowboys coach and all that stuff. Putting you on the spot, who like as a person were most impressed you? Rank them 1 through 3.
Like strictly like off the field, like as a kid.
Yeah, it's like interviewing them. Like who gave you the best vibe?
For me, the one that struck me the most, and maybe because it was earlier in the season and I hadn't, JJ was the first guy I talked to, but like I interviewed JC Latham when he played for IMG. Him and JJ were teammates, and JJ just was like giving me these answers like I felt like he was at a podium. And I remember like he was like, when you go to I had the interview on my phone. We were watching it the other day. Where he's like, when you go to IMG Academy, you give up your life and everything you love to go play football, to commit to your dream. And like, and it was just like, this dude is different, man. Like, he was saying things where I was like, dude, you're 17.
Yeah,
Like,
how old are you, bro?
he was an adult, and he was a really good kid, and he was the one where I just felt like he had spoken the most to the media, and that's what came across to me. Garrett he was the most fiery of them all. So if I had to rank them, I mean, I would put JJ 1, probably Quinn 2, just off like the interview stuff, and then Garrett 3, because there was just more hype around Quinn than Garrett. At the time, Garrett obviously went to LSU. He had a lot of hype as well, but Quinn was different.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking two 5-star, and then Nussmeier is a 4-star. Like, we're talking 3,
which is awesome,
like guys. Like,
I mean, yeah, Nussmeier's a guy we'll watch him. I think that's a really good breakdown, and it's a good segue to talk about JJ, because I do want to talk about JJ. We were huge JJ fans.
I gotta send y'all that video, man. He was like, you give up your life, you go play football, IMG, the dream, the team. I'm like, I asked him a question. It was ridiculous.
I can so see, because we studied this kid so much last year. On our show, we do kind of like a summer scouting. We do like throughout the year, the breakdown by position groups, and try to find guys who we think are not only like top of their position coming into the draft, but good fits for the Giants. And every week last year, we were like, oh, here's another Michigan kid. Here's another 2 Michigan kids. And then after like a few weeks, I'm like, they're going to win the national title. They're so freaking loaded.
Every top 5 we did, I swear to God.
Like who's beating this team? And then we get to, so we started watching Michigan games like weekly at that point, by like mid-September. And you got to like study JJ a lot, and we're like, this kid is just, he's different. Like and he was 20, and I was like, this is not normal, So yeah, we were big fans of his. We wanted to draft him at 6. Like, we were
that was my question. Would you? I mean, what about right now? Would you still pull the trigger?
I would. And this is not and this is not a knock at all on Malik. We would have taken, honestly, I would have taken JJ or Penix. I was a big fan of Michael Penix too. I think I had JJ and Penix like kind of equally in my mind for 2 different reasons. Penix, because I thought he was going to just be a plug and play awesome quarterback. I just love the way he played football, and he's a more mature player. And JJ, I just loved his demeanor, and the fact that he's such a winner, and like, he was so young, and I'm like, this kid is going to grow into something special. Like, you get to see it.
Yeah,
but absolutely
he's projectable.
Yeah, and we loved him. I would have taken him. And we love Malik Neighbors, man. We loved him. He was our first episode of the show. We were like, oh, Malik Neighbors, he could be a Giant. Like, he looks so awesome. Like, we were talking about how he might be better than Marvin, like, in the NFL. Like, it's possible, So we were big fans, but at the end of the day, you're drafting in the top 6 only so often, you hope. And in a class like last year with quarterbacks, I'm like, you gotta get this right. And I really believe in the quarterbacks. I'm like, just take the quarterback. It's gonna suck to lose a guy like Neighbors, but you can find star wide receivers, like, you really can.
Yep.
And finding that guy to lead your locker room as a quarterback is so much harder. So we were both like, take the quarterback. But where were you on this?
Man, at the time, I was really conflicted, because I like JJ, and I got a soft spot for him, man. Like, I got to cover him when he was 18, 17 years old. I want to see him be great. I'm sure you guys, after the film, like, there's a lot, but like, there was at times where I wanted to see it more, more. Not saying I didn't see it enough, but I would have liked to been a little more convinced. I would have been fine if the Giants took JJ at 6. But in that moment, I wanted Malik Neighbors at 6. When we got on the clock, and I talked about it for 4 months leading up to that, in that moment, I was like, take Malik Neighbors.
It was the safest pick.
Yeah,
it was by far the safest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
JJ could have been a home run, but Neighbors can be a double. Neighbors can be a triple. Like,
I think Neighbors is going to be a home run. Yeah, I think Neighbors is going to be a home run of a player. It's just,
oh yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to compare the two, but I'm like, deep in my brain, I kept thinking about draft night 2018, and I'm like, because there wasn't much more special. There were a few really special moments in Giants rookie history, and other than OBJ, I can't think of anything more special than Saquon Barkley 2018. Yep. And it didn't matter, right? Like it didn't matter because Eli was washed at that point, and we just kind of bypassed the opportunity to take a quarterback. And I remember that bothered me the night we took him. And then you watch Saquon, and you're like, this guy's freaking awesome. We did the right thing, but then you win 4 games,
Yep.
and you never got it right. So that's sort of not that it's the same position, but it's still like a dependent position, and you still don't have the quarterback.
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't want to go down the Daniel Jones
No,
road too
it's
far,
okay.
but yeah, I think
Yeah.
we all know we need him and everyone at the quarterback position to be better.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting kind of what you brought up with like JJ, because it's like it's like that became the whole argument. You're like you said you didn't see enough. That became the whole thing because
Mm-hmm.
the
It was like
discussion
sample
became,
size.
did
Yeah.
you not see enough because they they had a game plan that worked for them and they were undefeated and won a national championship and they just went with what worked and JJ operated the offense, or did he not have the ability to extend it? Or regardless, do you, even if the first part is true, do you just feel confident enough with the amount of tape that's out there to
Yep.
feel confident? So I understood like the reasonable takes in JJ. Some people just thought that he was terrible, which I didn't agree with, but
that was a crazy take. Yeah.
If you didn't, at the very least, watch the Michigan State game.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
like just watch that one, like, and then we can have a semi decent talk about it.
Yeah, there's a lot of like this dude has no arm. I'm like, you don't watch him if you
You
don't
didn't
think he
watch
hasn't.
just
Yeah,
watch one game.
Yeah.
but no, he was a polarizing prospect. There was a lot of things where it could go wrong with him, just based off of you didn't see enough. But he had a big arm. He had what you talked about. You fall in love with kind of the person JJ is the more you dig into him. I guess the good news that comes out of all kind of this, special for you here, is we get all. I mean, all of us here is we got a great player in Malik Neighbors. He's gonna be fun to watch. But really, all of us, we're all JJ fans. At least he got put in a great situation in Minnesota. If you want to see that kid succeed, that's gonna be a great spot for him to watch him succeed.
You know what I noticed about him over there? Because if you remember the lead up to the draft, and we talked about it when we did a review of JJ, we're like, if he struggles anywhere, it's in 2 areas. It's some of the touch throws, deep, and it's throwing to the left. And it was always like, I remember talking about it saying, this kid, he's just opening up too much, and he's just slinging it 2,000 miles an hour to the left, and he's missing. And it's just a mechanics thing. It's not like I can't do it. It's just a mechanics thing. And then now I'm watching all these highlights coming out of like Minnesota training camp, and it's just like touch pass after touch pass deep down the left sideline, touch pass, and it's just one after another, and I'm like, all right, so they're like emphasizing this as a point of development. Clearly, I mean, Kevin O'Connell knows what he's doing out there, and I don't think he's going to rush the kid, but it's very clear that he's going to develop him the way he wants. And yeah, I mean, between him and Penix, those two, right? You're looking at, I mean, it's just training camp, so I'm not going to go too crazy, but you're looking at them and you're like, everything that we thought they could be, they're showing already. And if either one of them or both of them hit, that's gonna burn.
It's training camp. Don't want to overreact, but some of the throws Michael Penix has made are like, that was different. Like he can spin it, man, and you saw that against Texas when they played.
Yeah.
But
Destroyed them.
I like Penix. Obviously, I have some concerns about the injuries, and you're concerned about everyone being injured and stuff like that. But like, if he's a great pro, I'm not going to be surprised at all because that dude makes throws that I don't. Caleb could probably make some, but outside of that in this class, Drake as well. But Michael Penix can sling it. He can fit it in tight spots.
Yeah, he's awesome. We saw that in college too. Like I loved him in college. I was like, this is a special like passer. Like I was like, this guy reminds me of like a lefty Matt Stafford, the way he was spinning it. I'm like, there's something special there. Yeah, and he's just so mature, and like to me it was never surprising that at the end of the college season, the last two standing were JJ McCarthy and Michael Penix. That never surprised me at all. I'm like, these are the winners. These two guys are the winners. And I'll tell you right now, it will not shock me if, not that I'm saying they're as good as Caleb Williams. Obviously they're not. But will it shock me if these two guys have better careers in terms of winning programs in the NFL than Caleb? Not at all. I think these two from this class might be the cream of the crop when it comes to like winning programs over time because that's just all they do. And I personally believe in it. I believe in like guys who lead winning programs, especially at the quarterback position. I know it's not a QB stat, but when you watch why teams win sometimes, like you see, just go back and watch Michael Penix against Oregon last year, that final drive where he just leads the team. Like Bo Nix just has like the drive of his career and gives Oregon the lead. And there's a couple of minutes left, and the guy in Oregon sideline celebrating, and they think they won the game. Penix comes out, he's like, remember he was rapping on the sideline. He was
Yeah,
just like relaxed
about
as
winning.
can be.
Mhm.
Comes out, and it was like I think it was three
It's so
passes,
cool.
right? It was like pass. It was like completion down the left sideline, completion down the left sideline, completion touchdown, game over. It was over like that. And the Oregon crowd was just in shock. They could
Yep.
not believe what happened to them, right? That kind of killer instinct in players is something I don't think is easy to find. So I loved him for that.
I'm a little worried that I didn't make a strong enough case for Michael Penix to potentially be the pick at 6 because I don't know, man. I'm just seeing him throw the ball, and like what you're saying is so true. Like, and I knew that, and I don't know, but maybe we won't see. Like, how long is he gonna have to sit? I want to see him go play football, but
Yeah.
unfortunately.
Hey, we have we have some of our friends who have joined us. Marshall, do you think you have a couple
Okay,
of
cool.
minutes to go over some questions? Like, do you have some
Yeah,
people
for
interested?
sure, for sure.
So let's start with our buddy Faris. He had a question. Faris Matana, for those of you who don't follow him, he has a great pod. Um, he's been with us doing some of these reviews. Faris,
Awesome.
put your handle in the chat if you don't mind. I think is it Ferris or Freeth? I always say we've been calling him Ferris, but I don't know. I'm calling him Faris right now. Anyway, his question for you, Marshall, was about the process between high school scouting and college scouting. Can you talk about that a little bit? The difference between the two.
Well, I wouldn't call myself like a college scout. So, I would do my own scouting, obviously, like for my show, but I wouldn't call myself a scout. That's not fair for me to do. So I haven't earned that. So I just kind of want to set the stage with that. But yes, when I did cover high school football, um, really, yeah, I mean, I don't. It's just a much different game, right? Like
Mhm.
it's high school is some of those people are playing for the last time in their career, whereas some of these guys in college are going to play in the National Football League. For me, like I really enjoy just watching high school quarterbacks. I got to coach some 7-on-7, do some travel stuff, and got to hang out with some of those guys. So, um, what's different is in high school, the quarterbacks are you're gonna be able to tell who's great right away, and they don't have to be perfect at every little thing. Like some of these kids don't know how to really read a defense in high school, but their talent just overtakes and they're able to have success. Whereas in college, I think maybe Quinn Ewers ran into that a little bit. His talent wasn't able to just make him the best player at that time. So I mean, when you're looking at high school players compared to college, you're looking at guys that are gonna just it's just much different. Like I really don't really know how to describe it. It's just much different.
Oh yeah,
Let
that
me take
makes sense.
let me take that question a little bit of a let me twist a little bit for you then.
Yeah.
Because we're trying to one of the things we're looking at is like trying to understand if we can find obviously the golden goose of this is all is like find the correlates, find the things that try to help you identify a sign of success at the
Yep.
NFL level from some of these
Okay.
prospects, right? Everybody's looking for that. But why don't you take it to the high school level? Like what you've seen these guys go to college. I'm sure you followed a lot of them as you follow, you've tracked them through high school and onward. In just empirically, what do you think? What traits, what characteristics did you see of the guys that actually made it at the college level versus those that didn't when you go back to what they had in high school?
I would say the guys that you could tell in high school played truly like because they loved the game. Because I think the biggest thing you see from kids going from high school to college, and the biggest difference there is the people that love the game, like truly love it. Like not they love it because they're good. They actually love the game. They love the process. They love everything about being a football player. Those guys are going to have more success because they're going to put in the time to get better. They're going to go to every single workout that they have when they show up to college. They're going to go to those voluntary ones. And I also think the players that their teammates respected, and they didn't just respect them because they were the best players, like the guys that were the captains of the team, like when you're amongst 25, 30, 17, 18-year-olds, you can tell which are those guys, like the ones that stand out amongst the group. So like when you would go to these 7-on-7 things, just the way these kids carry themselves, you could tell which ones are a little bit more invested and a little bit more professional and things of that nature. But I'm always looking at the mental side, because in high school, you can win with just talent. In college, you got to beat people that are better than you. And more often than not, that's going to come with between the ears and your love, your dedication, your preparation, and things like that.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense because, you know, that's something that carries over at every single level where you look for that. I mean, I've heard like Daniel Jeremiah and Bucky Brooks kind of talk about that and dealing with players that have some of those off-field problems, and they've kind of referred to just loving the game. They're like, look, I can deal with somebody who has off-field problems, because at the end of the day, if they love the game, you go, hey, dude, if you don't fix this, then the thing you love most in this world is going to be taken away from you. So like, if they can like leverage that, that's, you know, all it comes back to is if you love the game, you'll find a way to like make it work.
Yeah, talent's only going to take you so far, because, I mean, at some point, people are going to be just as good as you are, and what's going to make you better than them at that point? And you see that all the time, and kind of brings me back to JJ. Maybe not the most off the charts talented kid, but man, between the years, and he's miles above a lot of people, and I think that's what's going to, especially at the quarterback position, it's so mental, and that was big. Like, you just talk to these guys and things like that, but no, yeah, the mental side is very important, I think, when you're scouting these guys.
Sure.
Along those lines, so Kareem Yee, I don't know if you see it, Monty, you could pull up the question. He asked,
Yeah, that was a good one.
Do you guys think the JJ to Giants rumors are smokescreen or real, but ended up on the editing room floor for Hard Knocks? That's a good one. They sure made it seem like it wasn't real on Hard Knocks, right?
They sure did.
They
In that hour episode, they made it seem like they didn't talk about him one time in 5
not one time.
months.
They went through all their algorithms of here's what happens on draft night. He wasn't even mentioned. Like it's like it wasn't even a thought like in their top 10 like algorithms of what could happen. So I don't know. I'd like to believe you didn't take a Catholic boy from from the suburbs of Chicago on Easter Sunday for a workout if you had no interest in him. I'd like to believe they actually had legit interest.
Yeah, I mean, I think that shows they did, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna guess I'm gonna guess they wanted him, but that, like you said, like when push came to shove and they had to make a decision, they were like,
was Joe Shane willing to bet his career on JJ McCarthy?
And he clearly wasn't, because if he was, he would have
just put
in the card. Yeah, and I think when push came to shove, he decided the safest pick I can make here is Malik Neighbors. Like this is the highest yield pick I can make, and
if he misses, it's not like maybe I'm getting fired, but if I miss on JJ McCarthy, I'm for sure fired.
Yeah, I'll say I think it became a smokescreen at one point in time, but I don't think the process and the due diligence that they did in JJ McCarthy was a smokescreen. I think they wanted to go through every step and make sure that these top quarterbacks were to find out if they thought they were going to be a franchise quarterback. Because if they were, I think they wanted to take one. But I do think at some point they decided JJ McCarthy wasn't that. That's clear. And we heard a lot of hype that the Giants were interested in JJ all the way up to the draft. I don't think they brought him into the building and took him out on Easter to do a workout to do a smokescreen. I don't think they're wasting their visits for that. But I do think they were pushing some stuff to the media to try to ensure they got Malik Neighbors towards the end there.
Yeah. One thing I loved about Hard Knocks was we got that peek behind the screen of when Joe Shane was about to go talk about Saquon Barkley. The way he was rehearsing, Joe Shane's not going to say anything that he hasn't practiced, that he hasn't rehearsed, that he has a motive for every reason he speaks. And we had lucky enough this year at ChatSports, we were able to send 4 or 5 people to the NFL Combine. I wasn't able to go, but they had heard that the Giants were definitely interested in JJ McCarthy. Like that was the buzz at the Combine. Like you said, was that smoke? Was that real? I guess we'll never know, but I think that what Hard Knocks led on is not 100% true. I think there were probably some really strong conversations about JJ McCarthy.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess to put a bow on the question, in my opinion, they had real interest. But I think what you saw from John Mara in there, where he was like, "Well, if you believe in a guy and have conviction in him, I'm not going to stop you." Like that's sort of like the John Mara passive aggressive way of saying, like, it's your, this is your funeral if you fuck up,
That's
like,
exactly what he said.
so,
That's
yeah,
exactly what he
like,
said.
so he kind of like let him know, like, I mean, I think that's his way of saying you just gave $160 million to Daniel Jones. If you want to do this again, I'm not going to stop you, but don't be wrong. You better
I
be
mean,
damn sure that you're right.
how does he get
Uh,
another job if he picks a quarterback that's not good? He paid Daniel Jones and he missed on a top 5 pick. You're
he's
never a
gun,
GM again.
yeah,
No.
and I think he's gun shy at this point and at making that decision. Now, I will
Yes,
say
yes, he is. He
at the,
doesn't want to make it.
but you don't want a gun shy GM when it comes to that
Mm-mm.
call, right? And I think here's the bottom line: whatever the Giants' motivation was, whether it was smokescreen, real fear, whatever it was, if the reality is of either JJ McCarthy or Michael Penix, and you could throw Bo Nix in there too, although I really didn't have him up with those guys. But if either of those two guys hit and become like sort of perennial top 10 to 15 NFL franchise quarterbacks who are looking, and Joe Shane doesn't have an answer very quickly, like he's probably looking for a job anyway, and he may not get another
Mm-hmm.
shot at this. So the point is you just have to be right. You just have to be right in your call. Like if as great as Malik Neighbors can be, and I think he can be a top 5 receiver in the NFL. He's that good, right?
Yeah, same.
If he hits that potential, but either one of those two guys becomes like a top 10 NFL quarterback, you're
You
looking
better have
back.
your guy.
You better find your guy quickly.
Yep.
That's what I'm
Yeah.
going to say.
Better
If you
find
find
your
your guy
guy.
quickly, fine. But if this year is kind of like what it's been for the last 5 years, and then you go into the year after that and you don't have a solution when this draft, like we're talking about, we don't know who the top guys are going to be yet, right? If you don't find your guy and you're still kind of spinning your wheels in the mud, people are going to start talking about you in the national media. Like, what did you do? One year you paid this guy 160 million. Next year you passed on guys who end up becoming good quarterbacks. It's just, that's the reality of the situation. He's just got to be right.
And he's got to win. They got to start winning games
They have to win.
with what they have around them. Like, you're put in a situation where you're trying to build a roster that's quarterback proof. We talked about this a little bit with the Talking Giants guys and the Big Blue Banter guys. Like at this point, they're just trying to win because their roster is so strong. But they got a long way to go still.
You want to pull up the Adam Karp question?
Yep.
All right. So Adam says, like the transfer of Jaden blocking Nussmeier, the transfer of Caleb to USC blocked Miller Moss. Moss flashed with 6 touchdowns in the Holiday Bowl. Any thoughts on Moss as a pro? So I'll throw it to you, Marshall. Have you watched Miller Moss at all? Do you know anything about him?
I watched a little bit, not really enough for me to confidently give any declaration about him as a prospect. So I don't really want to. I mean, I've watched a little bit. Good. I think he's a good quarterback. I don't know. I haven't done any deep dive on him though. Not yet. No.
Yeah, totally fair. I'll answer a little bit because I did do a little bit of all 22 on Miller Moss because I was curious. Really good game. He was extremely efficient. He I'm trying to remember exactly what my notes were on him, but I remember he was an extremely efficient guy. That impressed me. He was just consistently getting the ball out and getting it to his targets. I was not overwhelmed with his arm strength. I want to see a little bit more of that, but he was a little bit more athletic than I thought he was. So he's definitely a guy I'm keeping an eye on, but he didn't intrigue me quite as much as Nussmeier, because Nussmeier just has a little bit more of his arm is just a different level than some of these other guys in college.
He reminds me, Miller Moss, a little bit it's one game, but then I went back and looked at his high school profile, and I think his high school profile kind of matched what you saw in that bowl game. There's a lot of Carson Beck style, in this guy,
Okay.
like very calm, you know, cerebral, smart passer. Doesn't necessarily wow you with anything. Like there was no wow factor, but just really like unfazed by pressure.
Yes,
And keep in mind, like Like that pressure at USC was horrific last year.
That
Like Caleb Williams was had like some of the worst O-line play we've ever seen in college, and he was running around for his life. And Miller Moss was just complete. He was in the same against the same O-line with the same O-line. He stood there under fire very calmly and sort of just got the ball down the field. It was very impressive to watch.
I knew I was forgetting something. That was it was. He was very, very good under pressure. That was what stood out to me most. He took pressure extremely well in that
Yeah.
game.
It's one game though. Like I don't know what to
Mhm.
make of it. I mean, as a high school prospect, I think when I looked him up, he was sort of in the same category of like Nussmeier, like these 4-star guys who project more as kind of like day 2, day 3 guys, as opposed to like the top the top tier guys. But that's a guy
Yeah,
like if he put,
yeah.
I mean, he's got a great, supposedly great, QB coach. I have my questions about that. At USC, but he's in a situation where he could do something. He has Zach Branch out there, who's I think a future number one, like first round pick. So if he has a really big campaign, they're in the Pac-10 this year, right? I'm sorry, in the Big
Big
Ten this
time.
year, right?
Mhm.
So if he has a big year in the Big Ten, starting, I think Miller Moss is in that group of guys who I think you can see rising into contention for being like a first round pick if he has a monstrous year. There's
Definitely.
so many of these guys.
There's a lot of those guys this year. So do we want to, we spent a lot of time on this. Do you want to just finish out here? Just some thoughts about the upcoming preseason game tomorrow?
Yeah, whatever. We can do whatever.
All right. So tomorrow, facing the Detroit Lions, we've been doing, we've all been kind of keeping up with, our joint practices this week.
Yep.
Few fights. So that's always, this team seems to have some fire again. So that was fun
Love
to
that.
see. Malik Neighbors got targeted 17 times over the 2 joint practices, or 18 times of the joint practices, and caught 17 balls. He's looked different this whole time, but doesn't seem like they're likely to put the starters out there. They've gotten a lot of reps from these joint practices. I know Detroit has already said they're not putting the starters out there, and typically with these joint practices, you don't see the starters go out there. So I'll start with you, Marshall. What are you looking forward to seeing tomorrow? Is there any under the radar players you want to see? Do you want to, or anything else, even if it's not players that you want to keep an eye on tomorrow?
Yeah, so if the starters aren't playing for the Giants, the people that I'm going to be keeping my eyes on the most, I'm going to be looking at that RB2 battle. I really want to know if Tyrone Tracy can be that guy. His tape in college is awesome. He's a big play threat. I'm sure you guys are big fans of him as well. And is Eric Gray an NFL running back? I didn't love the pick last year. I thought he struggled as a pass protector last year in the preseason and in camp. And I think that Tyrone Tracy and maybe even Dante Miller could jump him in the depth chart. So I'm going to be paying attention to that running back battle. I think Cordell Flott should play tomorrow. I think he should get as many reps as he possibly needs.
Yes.
RB2, CB2, those are 2 positions that I'm really going to be focused on. And then, of course, Drew Lock and Tommy DeVito. I think DeVito knows that he's got to outplay Drew Lock probably to a pretty strong degree if he's going to be that quarterback 2, or if the Giants are going to carry 3 quarterbacks. Joe Shane hasn't done that yet as a general manager. Maybe that changes with the injuries to Daniel and the contract, the way that it's structured. But, just some position battles, what I'm looking at. Quarterbacks, this is like the first time I can remember Giants having 3 quarterbacks that at least all are interesting in the preseason, where you don't get to that 4th quarter and you're like, I don't even know who we're watching at this point. But
And they
quarterback,
can't control football against NFL talent.
So got an NFC Offensive Player of the Week, Tommy DeVito, beating Green Bay Packers. But quarterback, running back 2, and then can one of these flyers that Joe Shane took on, the 5 DBs he signed to the vet minimum since the draft, can one of them maybe emerge as a player? Because I am not confident in our corner room outside of Deontay Banks. And even him, he's a 2nd-year player. Are we asking him to do too much as a rookie? He had some really good moments as a rookie. He also had some not so good moments as a rookie. He was a rookie. But that's what I'll be watching for.
What about you, Sal? What are you going to be watching for?
I definitely agree with RB2. I mean, it's an interesting room because with Saquon gone, all of a sudden, it's not just that Saquon's gone. It's like the total number of RB reps are completely up for grabs, right? And there's no like obviously like Motor Singletary is the guy you expect at least in the beginning of the season to get the bulk of those
Yeah.
carries. But Monty, you and I talked about this after Tyrone Tracy was drafted. We're like, this kid, like, he's older, but he has no tread on his tires. Like, he was a wide receiver. He has almost what do you have, like 100 rushes total or something in college, like barely anything out of the backfield. And whatever I saw of him, I noticed a couple of good things. Like, he's a good runner. Like, he's surprisingly has good instincts for being a running back for a guy who never really played running back. He's a good one cut and run kind of guy, like a lot of these guys are. Obviously, a pretty good pass receiver, not as good a receiver as you would think, being a
Yeah.
wide receiver before, but obviously reliable. What I
Yeah.
really stood out to me though when I was watching his tape was, man, this guy can really pass protect well. I don't know if you got into that
Yep.
yet, but he was a very sturdy, reliable pass protecting running back, and I think you cannot play at the NFL level if you can't protect your quarterback. That you're just not, and that's why Eric Gray cannot get on the field, right? And
Yep.
here's the thing about the Eric Gray pick, because I hated the Eric Gray pick when we made it. I hated it because there were just other players I wanted to take a swing at. I wanted guys like Chris Rodriguez, who went to the Commanders. I wanted those power back type guys, but he wasn't a good pass protector in college either, right? So there were things about his scouting report that were kind of obvious, and then it played out, and then the Giants kind of didn't know what to do with him, which really bothered me.
He also didn't punt return in college, and Joe Shane tried that.
It just seems like a waste of a pick, right?
Yeah.
I have more hope for Tyrone Tracy, but what I like about Turbo Miller specifically is that speed element is something nobody else in the room has, and you want it. And I mean, the kid ran what was a 4.27 on his pro day. And you can see it. Like, he is quick. He looks like he's shot out of a cannon. So get that kid on the field. I'd love to see the majority of the reps this year go to those three.
I could see Turbo Miller tear up the second half of this game. Do you guys a little bit of throwback name? Do you guys remember Darrell Scott, his rookie year when he tore up preseason? Yeah, he out of Maryland. He had like 4.3 speed. He was a stocky motherfucker too. That kind of reminds me of like a prototype. Yeah, exactly. I could see him having a preseason kind of like Darrell Scott had back in the day.
No, I agree. I like the kid a lot. I think he adds an element. I'm looking for that. CB2 definitely is a battle. Here's the thing about CB2. Cordell Flott is clearly a guy who plays better than he practices. Like, he does this every year. Was I happy when they took Cordell Flott at 81st overall when he had like a 6th round grade, according to most people? I thought they were out of their damn mind. Right, at 160, like an outlier in every way. You took him. Okay, he was 20 years old when you drafted him, so clearly it was, all right, we're taking a developmental guy who we think has the upside to be a good corner. This is year 3. You've been developing him. In my opinion, unless you think you're winning a Super Bowl, you get his ass out there and play him as much as possible. You've got to know what you got in this kid. Unless you're convinced he's not good, right? If you're convinced he's just a waste of a pick and he's a career backup, fine, but you didn't replace him before the season. I just don't want to see them like give up on him that easily. Like, let him play. Let's see what he can do in real games. If he's getting destroyed, fine, right? But I'd like him to get actually a shot in real games, and I want him playing out there. I know what Nick McLeod is. Nick McLeod's a good corner. He's probably a very good CB4, right? Like, he's like a guy premier. He's a premier backup, right? He can do it all. He can play slot, play outside, play a little safety. Put him in a pinch, like he came in that Green Bay game a couple of years ago. He'll make plays for you. He looks good. I'm pretty confident that if you start Nick McLeod regularly on the outside corner, as outside corner, he's going to be the target, and he's going to get picked on a lot because I don't think he can run with most guys at the NFL level who are wide receiver twos. I don't believe it.
I thought you said it's perfect. He's a great CB4 because he could play some outside. He could play some nickel. We saw him working at safety last year. Good special teams guy. I want Cordell Flott to be that guy. That means we don't have to get somebody else. But it's also like, do I want to lose football games this year because of Cordell Flott? And maybe, that's the wrong way to think, right? Maybe it really is because you should, give him a chance. But look, he had a great play on 3rd and long against the Minnesota Vikings in the playoffs. The pass breakup on KJ Osborne, like a little thrown behind him by Kirk, but lot was there, but I really believe and I know it's not always, but if you're getting cooked in practice, you're probably going to get cooked in the games.
And another name to keep an eye on, a name you heard a lot around this time last year, I haven't heard a lot about at all. See if Trey Hawkins can kind of recapture some of his
He got
preseason magic
everybody
from
last
last
year.
year. Show if he can maybe
Got the coaching staff
year.
too.
See if he can do something. With that said, with the coaching stuff, I was actually kind of where I was going to go with this. I agree with what you guys said with the players I'm going to watch for. I very much Ryan was in the same place. But the other thing I'm going to keep an eye on is the coaching staff in two ways. Is one, I really want to kind of get a good idea what Shane Bowen's defense looks like. Him without Mike Vrabel, and see, start to get a feel for that, because this is the first time we truly get to see it.
Yep.
And the other one is, I want to kind of see what this offense starts to look, if it looks any different with Brian Dable being the play caller. So those are two things I'm definitely keeping an eye on.
Those are really good points. I hadn't even really thought about that yet. Those are two really good points.
So I think CB is the big area. I'll be honest, I don't care who they play out there. I'm pretty confident that early in the season, at least, our secondary is going to get absolutely shredded. Like it's just like you said, everybody is playing at minimum at a level that they've never played at before. CB2, CB1, everybody else has not started. Jason Pinnock is now your veteran safety and your leader of the room. Everybody's been upgraded. And you're talking about all these kids going into that role in a defense that is so complex in the secondary. Like there's so many, it's clearly like a lot of match principles, and you see these blown coverages, and that's clearly just, it's communication, not knowing when to hand off. I think it'll take time for these kids to learn how to play together in this more complex Shane Bowen system, which I actually like the system. I think it's a great system for what's going on in the NFL, but it takes time to gel. And I think these kids are definitely going to get torched early. I would be absolutely stunned if they've got it down by week one. I'm really going to be surprised if that's the case. But that's okay. Like I want them to learn. I want them to learn together. If a lot of these guys are part of the future, let them get out there, figure this out, figure out the system together and play. That's why I want Flat out there. So I'm kind of fine with it, with him being out there. Linebacker has become an interesting spot. I don't know if you guys have been following the story, but very quietly, it looks like Deontay Johnson is challenging Michael McFadden for that starting job. So have you watched him play at all? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I was reading up. I forgot which Giants beat reporter wrote the article, but Johnson was saying and giving credit to his ability to pick up this new defense because it's really similar to what he ran at Toledo, and he's an athletic guy. I don't know if I would say he is. I want to see Mike McFadden get another chance at the job. McFadden really impressed me. A lot of missed tackles last year. Got better as the season went on. I think he was number one in the league in missed tackle percentage for a certain number of snaps at linebacker. But I thought McFadden and Okereke brought some to this defense that we didn't really have at that linebacker spot the last couple of years. And whether Johnson challenges him for reps or beats him out, I just like the depth that we have there because we know Isaiah Simmons is going to be all over the field as well. He'll be in some sub packages at linebacker. So whether it's Simmons, whether it's McFadden, or whether it is Johnson, like we actually have some players and some playmakers and athletes at the inside linebacker spot that I feel like the Giants have lacked speed there for a really long time.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not, I understand that there might be an idea here that Mike McFadden is just simply not a fit for Shane Bowen's defense, and maybe they will make a switch here. But I'm not ready to let Mike McFadden go without a fight. I want, he had a really good season last year. And I think he deserves, a chance to really get out on the field and show that he can still be the player he was last year, and to even, take a step up, fix some of the issues he had, and, continue to see success in Shane Bowen's defense, even if, his prototype might not necessarily make you feel that way.
So I remember Dan Duggan of The Athletic wrote a couple of months ago, Shane Bowen with the Tennessee Titans ran the dime package 24% of the time, second most in the league. So we're going to see a lot of just Bobby Okereke on the field. So maybe, they see Johnson more as like a guy that can do what Okereke can compared to, can Micah McFadden be a coverage guy while also being a guy that can help in the run? Maybe that's where it changes up. But I think we're going to see a lot of defense with sometimes 6 DBs on the field. Like he runs a lot. He did. Maybe that was a Vrabel influence. We'll be able to see, without him now. But I'm expecting a lot of heavy DB packages where I want to see those 3 safety looks with Newman, with Pinnock, and Belton all on the field at the same time.
Definitely.
I think we're going to see a ton of it.
I got actually one more for you guys that I just thought of that I really want to see and we haven't touched on is how I want to see how this defensive line room, the interior defensive line room, shakes out outside of Dexter Lawrence. It seems to really be up for grabs, and right now it seems like Elijah Chapman might be really one of the preseason darlings of this year, and with not really being a Jordan Phillips seems to be having a decent camp. Nacho's Nacho, but he might be able to push to get a spot on this line at, maybe at like that 3 tech position.
Yeah. I feel like Jordan Riley, I fell in love with Jordan Riley last year. I don't know if he was just a wink guy or what. I'd like to see him still get a chance at it. I'm obviously the Elijah Chapman hype is pretty cool. 6 foot, 287-pound defensive
6
tackle
foot with high heels on. That dude is not 6 feet tall.
I'm saying but we've heard it Hard Knocks, and Bowen says it on 3rd and long and passing downs, he wants to have 4 players on the line of scrimmage and get after the quarterback. And if Chapman playing next to Dexter can give you a little bit of an inside pass rush where Nacho or Phillips can't, let's do it. I'm all for that. I don't know if he'll be able to hold up in the run game. Maybe they don't even put him in that position to do so. But him versus the Lions have a good front. That'll be fun to watch.
I think the truth is our starting defensive lineman next to Dexter Lawrence is still not on this team. I think they're going to rotate guys this year, and it's another position where Joe Shane just didn't fill it. And we're just going to guys. I mean, obviously I don't like that, but the flip side of that is a lot of guys get a chance to show you something because they otherwise would be blocked. So Chapman is emerging. Riley lost like 20 or 30 pounds coming into camp. So he's clearly moving. Yeah, he's down to like 318. Yep. So he's like sliding into that's the thing. What you liked about Riley, I don't get this. Like what you liked about him was he was just a big human block of cinder. Yep. He was a big cinder block, and you're like, all right, just sit there and eat blocks, right? And let Dexter Lawrence do his thing or give Dex a break. He's not that size anymore. He's more of a 3 tech size now at his height. And I think they're having him play that. So I'm curious to see if he has any pass rushing chops. I've never seen it from him, so I don't know what's happening. But
you got Andre Patterson.
Yeah, I mean, you never know.
Andre Patterson's going to get you right. Patterson's going to get you right.
Wouldn't it be nice if we gave Andre Patterson somebody with real high end talent, other than Dexter Lawrence? But yeah, I think the guy may not be on a guy I liked. I'm still banging the drum for him, hoping that we kind of shake him loose. Is a kid went undrafted. I don't know if you got a chance to see him in college, but Leonard Taylor, who was at Miami, did you watch him at all?
Not much, no.
So he was a guy who coming into last year was in contention for D lineman 2 or 3 of the class. He was really good coming into last year in summer scouting at Miami, like an absolute athletic freak on film at least. And really good pass rusher, raw natural talent. He didn't blow up the combine, and he kind of had a subpar year compared to what people expected, but that's because they had him playing nose tackle at 300 pounds last year when he's really more of a 3 to 5. He looks like an edge rusher out there. His physique is like that. They had him playing nose, but even playing at nose, this guy was winning in pass rushes. His pass rush win rate as a nose tackle was 13%, which is insane. That's edge territory. Normally these guys are 5-6%. So he went undrafted, I think for a lot of the reasons I mentioned, and he landed on the Jets. And I don't see how he makes the Jets team. I don't know how. That squad is loaded. So I know the Giants didn't look at it, but I would love a guy like him in the room since we're just kind of throwing darts at the wall.
Yeah,
get
I
a
think
freak
Joe
in
Shane's going to be active in the waiver wire. I mean, we saw that 2 years ago when they picked up McLeod and Pinnock. We're at the top of the list now.
Yep.
I think they're going to be hunting for a DT and probably a corner. Maybe even another center or something like that.
They like stealing Jets players, so
Yeah.
I mean, go get one.
I mean, keep an eye on all, that's a good conversation maybe we'll have towards the end of this preseason. So, I mean, keep an eye on the Lions, the Texans, and the Jets because, when they get to see these guys in person, you really start to scout them. That's what sometimes where you steal them. So, the Lions don't have great depth at CB, but, they have decent D-line. Maybe there's somebody you see there. So, it's a thought for tomorrow, too, when you're watching these games.
Good point.
So before we let you go, Marshall, there's one area of the Giants we haven't talked about, and I feel like I don't know how people are not talking about it because it's all we ever talk about. But what are your thoughts on the current Giants O-line? Like it's the first time in a long time where it feels like not super controversial, but give me your 30,000-foot view on this thing and where do you think this is going?
Yeah. I don't love, going all the way back to when Joe Shane took over, I don't love the lack of moves that have been made there, but to be where we are at today, I am so happy to have maybe a middle of the pack offensive line. Even if they're the 20th best offensive line. I think the difference maker is going to be John Michael Schmitz in year 2. In year 1, and he's got to get healthy. I don't know how serious the shoulder injury is. Brian Dable is, so honest with these injuries, so I'm sure he's really day to day, like he's saying. But, like in theory, John Michael Schmitz, year 2, hopefully an offensive line coach that can relate more. Like on paper, Andrew Thomas, we know who he is. John Runyon has showed he's actually a better left guard than right guard in his career. JMS, can he take a leap in year 2? Van Roten was a top 10 PFF. If you trust PFF or not, he was top 10
good last year.
Yeah, as a pass blocker, he's good. Run blocker is a Priscillo zone system that maybe doesn't make him look great, whatever it may be. He showed he could pass protect last year, and he had really good chemistry with Jermaine Illuminor, right tackle. And I think that's so underrated, chemistry amongst the offensive line and continuity.
Agreed.
And we're going to have the same right side of the offensive line for the Raiders, who weren't world beaters last year, but solid. And man, if we could have a 19th best offensive line in the NFL, I'd sign up for that.
Yeah, I'm with you. I am a little worried about JMS. I asked Duggan this in my own way today during his stream. I think my exact question to him was, is JMS in witness protection? Because we haven't seen this guy. It's been like 8 practices where he's been gone. And Duggan's talking about how he's in pads, he's on the sideline doing work, but they're not being, I get nervous when Brian Dable talks like this about players. He starts getting real sketchy about these
so
answers.
Honest, man.
Right. I mean, it's like he'll be like when Brian Dable, the way he's talking about JMS is usually how he talks about people like the day before they have their arm amputated. It's just. I'm really concerned about this guy's shoulder. Like he got it hurt on that stupid tush push last year, and I don't know if it's right. I think it's the same shoulder injury.
I was going to say I didn't know if it was the same one from that.
We don't know. We don't know. But he hurt it last year, missed a bunch of time, and then now he's got a problem with his shoulder, and they're being so secretive about what's going on. So I am concerned about this guy.
Van Roten hasn't done anything but play center since coming here. Hasn't taken a snap at guard.
And that worries me, because
that's probably something we need to pay more attention to.
Bill Hartnett says same shoulder, different injury. Okay, thanks, Bill. I didn't know that it was a different injury, but it does bother me. It's the same shoulder. It's so I don't know if they sign a center or find a center somewhere. I would be very that might be the smart thing to do, since obviously they don't like Austin Schlottman. They gave him 2 years of guaranteed money, but
why has he not gotten a chance with Van Roten at guard?
It makes no sense.
I mean, they obviously realize he's not good, but you should have realized that before you gave him 2 years, of guaranteed money. I don't understand that. But if they go out and get another center, I think that would be a very strong tell that they don't think that JMS is going to be ready anytime soon. So I don't think you want to go into the season with Van Roten playing center all the time, but it's the one thing that bothers me right now. I'm good with Illuminor.
If and when Evan Neal does come back this year, is it at tackle or guard, or what's the long-term play here, you think?
What we would do?
I'm sure you guys would make the sensible decision. What do you think the Giants would do?
I would look. We've had this discussion before free agency. We said that if the Giants bring in a guy like Illuminor, or our guy was Mike Unwin, right? That was the guy we wanted, but Illuminor was sort of like the backup plan, right? And so either one of those guys, if you bring one of these guys in, my idea was let them compete in OTAs camp. See who looks good and but play them both on the right side. Winner gets tackle, loser gets guard, that kind of thing. And Monty's idea was more like just move him to guard. Like and it's a valid point. Like I'll let you make it, Monty, but your point was always, like you can tell him why you said that.
Yeah, my thought process, the more I thought about it, it seems like, there's some people still believe in Evan Neal, but for the most part, it seems like most Giants fans are at the point where it's like I still think Evan Neal can be maybe an average tackle. That's where people's head kind of at. I'm like, well, if we're hoping like the ceiling at this point is Evan Neal can be an average tackle, we've seen guys like Sam Cosmi, Tevin Jenkins, even Eric Flowers move inside, and
Flowers,
like in the case of the first two guys become like borderline all pro level players. So I'm like, to me, if you can actually get a good player out of Evan Neal instead of just hoping for average by moving them inside, look at what like Robert Hunt got paid. Robert Hunt got paid $20 million. These guys are valuable. Like if you could get that type of play out of Evan Neal, like I know that they tell you can't draft a guard inside the top 10, but if you end up with a Pro Bowl guard, you're not gonna be mad about it. Like,
nope.
So
no.
that's
what do we think they're going to do, Marshall? That was your question. I think they're going to bring him back, and I think he's going to be the first man up to take a tackle job if somebody gets hurt. I think that's
the swing tackle.
Yeah, I think so. I think they'll and hopefully it's not on the left side. But and Illuminor doesn't miss games. But if somebody got hurt, people are like everybody's Lou Gehrig until they get to the Giants, and then all of a sudden they can't get on the damn field again. They get hurt. But I think he's more likely to play tackle. I personally get him reps at guard. I think he has a shot to play at guard. He's got a better shot to come in and play guard this year than he does of playing tackle, in my opinion. And if he's good at guard, like you have a whole year and a half or whatever to see him play that position. If he's like Monty said, if he's really good, you can lock him down long term at that position, and have a guard spot taken up by a solid player. But if he doesn't hit, if they don't train him a guard and he can't hit a tackle, he's basically he's gone, like for nothing.
Yeah. That's what I would move him to guard. Like, do I want a okay-ish swing tackle, or do I want to maybe have a chance at a solid guard?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And Bill said Illuminor lifted Hutchinson off his feet on one play, like literally picked him up. I'm good with Illuminor. I'm with you, man. Like what he did to Aiden Hutchinson, man. There was rep after rep where he just had Aiden Hutchinson in the dirt. He was like taking him out wide. He was just stonewalling him. Like the dude's a good NFL tackle. Like he's not great, but like, middle of the pack, like 15, 16 best right tackle, like in the NFL. Sign me up all day.
He's only getting better at right tackle too. Like he hasn't played it his whole career. He's played a lot of guard last 2 years, his first years, like really playing right tackle. And Drain's a really good dude. And I think obviously Giants fans are already falling in love with him. He's a good football player too.
Yeah. And, the point that you just said there, Marshall, is something I was going to kind of say too. Sal mentioned earlier, like Lunar doesn't get hurt. So how is Evan Neal necessarily going to get the shot at tackle? I'll tell you, if there's an injury at guard, I think they'd move Illuminor back over to guard, and then they would put Evan Neal in a tackle, and it'd be the whole shuffling of the line all over again.
Be so terrible. I hope they don't do that. Like that's what happens.
I hate that if one player gets, this is what we dealt with last year. I hate the idea of if one player gets hurt, we're switching like 3 players' positions. Like that's what bothers me. Like that you can't get cohesiveness on the line. I'll say just to my thoughts about where the line is at, I'm decently happy. And I think that Van Roten changed my entire outlook for this line because I think it was a piece of depth we desperately needed. And although I want Van Roten to be at right guard and getting reps there, I'd much rather see Van Roten put in at center than when we were putting freaking John Runyon there when JMS is out. I'd rather you put like a guy like Van Roten in there and just let John Runyon, who you signed for $10 million a year to focus on playing guard and let a guy who's a veteran who you're not paying a ton of money move around a little bit if you need to, but don't shuffle the whole line to do it.
Yep. 100% agree with you. The overcompensation at times is, especially on the front five, like those guys have to be, you got to be moving together. You got to be in sync. I mean, call blitz, it's all about comfortability and continuity up there. Obviously, got to be skilled, but I agree. That's a really good point.
Let's get Andrew Thomas the same left guard for more than 2 games in a row, because that guy has not had that his entire career. At one point, I went through and counted how many left guards he's had, and it was like 8 or 9 or something like that. It's insane.
Yeah.
All right. I think that's probably a good place to stop. We've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes. Marshall, we really appreciate you, man. Enjoy the conversation. A little bit of prospect, a little bit of Giants. That's what we do here. So before we close it out, why don't you tell the good people who are paying attention, listening, tell us about yourself. Give them your handle, and your YouTube page, whatever you want to tell these guys, because they should definitely follow you.
Yeah, no, shout out to you guys. Appreciate you guys reaching out. I don't get to do this all that often, but this was a lot of fun. Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at @MarshallGreen_. I work for ChatSports, cover the Giants and the Knicks. If you type in Knicks Now by ChatSports or Giants Now by ChatSports, those channels will come out. We put out videos every single day, and we do like watch parties as well for the Giants and the Knicks. So if you don't have the Giants game on the TV and you're looking for like a radio hangout, tailgate type of thing, tune into Giants Now. I think it's pretty cool. We have a lot of fun.
Awesome. And we have, for those watching, we have Monty put up Marshall's Twitter handle, like streaming on the bottom here of the screen. Definitely tune in and watch his content. Otherwise, we have stuff planned up, guys. I know we've been taking some weeks off, summertime, vacations, family stuff. We're back. I think we're planning on moving to Wednesdays from now on to not interfere with your Thursday night football plans. So we'd like to see you guys every Wednesday night, usual time. We're getting started with our summer scouting series by the end of August. I think we're planning week 0 to be our first episode. And that's, I think, the week of August 24th, something like that, right? I forgot what the exact date was.
Something like that.
We're going to come out with our first episode. We haven't decided which position group, but a couple of ones we're thinking about are things like interior defensive line, running back. Yeah, so some things that the Giants might be looking at next year. So tune in. We'll definitely have weekly episodes until then, as best we can. Talk about Giants training camp leading up to the season. Follow us at He's a Giant Pod on Twitter. Follow Monty at Montecristo, MONTECRI 5TO. Follow me at Queens_guy. Like, subscribe. Thank you guys for tuning in. Until we see you next week, go Giants.
Go Giants.